Please bear with my laryngitis this morning. I'm doing the best I can. And I have pinch hitters for different parts of the service, so we'll get through it, I guarantee. Well, about today's lesson. Peter has seemed to be keeping things together. On the surface, it looks like he's nearly recovered from that last awful week of Jesus' life. The worst night of his life was when he denied that he was one of Jesus' disciples, not once, but 3 times. As he warmed his hands by the charcoal fire and tried to blend into the crowd, desperately hoping that people wouldn't notice him, while he strained to hear any updates about what might have happened after Jesus' arrest. For Peter, the worst part was that Jesus predicted those fearful denials. Jesus knew that Peter would deny his own discipleship. Since Jesus' resurrection, Peter is moving through the world in joy. After he saw Jesus himself for the first time, he knew he was forgiven. But something is still not as it was before. Yet he stops to think about it. What happened when he denied knowing Jesus was that a huge hole was torn in his soul. He's wandering around, those torn ends still not repaired, hugging them close to his body so that others might not notice. He tries to return to normal, telling a few of his friends one night that he feels like going fishing, which is what he used to do for a living. But even that doesn't turn out like he hopes. When a man calls to them from the beach to change their strategy, and when that change of strategy nets a lot of fish, the words of his friend, "It is the Lord," are all he needs. He jumps up, throws on some clothes, and dives into the water. He will be the first to greet his Lord. It's an awkward sight. Peter throwing on some clothes and leaving his friends to struggle with a catch so large they have to drag it to shore. They can't even haul it into the boat. Peter is motivated because he still has this hole, you see. He can't imagine how it will be repaired or healed. He just knows that he needs to be with Jesus. There was another charcoal fire with fish and bread, hot and ready to eat. They are hungry, and Jesus invites them to have breakfast. He will feed them himself. We know the pattern, although not all the actions are named. Jesus will take the bread and fish, bless them, break them, and share them with his friends. It's a Eucharistic pattern. This is a pattern that has become familiar to them too. But then after breakfast, something different happens. Jesus turns his focus on Peter. "Do you love me more than these?" he asks. But he might just as well be asking, "Do you love me more than your own life? Do you love me more than all the ways you'll try to protect yourself or keep control of your destiny?" Peter is puzzled, but determined not to fail this test. "Yes, Lord," he says, "you know that I love you." Jesus responds with the enigmatic words, "Feed my lambs." But then Jesus asks again, and Peter answers in the same way. "Tend my sheep," Jesus directs. But when Jesus asks Peter a 3rd time, Peter knows that there's no chance, that Jesus just didn't hear him the first 2 times. This means something, and he knows why. And a sense of sorrow and regret fills him. Is Jesus taunting or provoking him because he denied Jesus 3 times on that cold night by the other charcoal fire? But then, after Jesus' anticipated response, he goes on. "When you were younger," he says, "you were in control of your own life. You dressed yourself and went wherever you wanted to go. But if you love me as my disciple, he seems to be saying, things will change for you. When you grow old, you will reach out, but those choices will be removed from you. You'll end up where you don't want to go. And we're told that Jesus is predicting the type of death that Peter will die as Jesus' disciple. And then comes the command, follow me. Jesus has repaired the hole in Peter's soul. He will no longer have to hug the frayed ends close to himself, feeling damaged and fearful. Peter is whole. Peter is already forgiven. But what happened here is that Jesus has picked up those drop stitches and repaired the torn cloth, knitting him into the group from which he felt alienated. The group of Jesus' disciples, soon to be called apostles, the sent out ones. Because he has now received both a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. It's as if Jesus is saying to him over this second healing charcoal fire, you belong. And you have a charge to take care of my other children. Feed my lambs, tend my sheep. Feed my sheep, follow me. David Lose says, we all need to feel accepted by a larger group in order to have a stable identity and sense of self. This goes against what may seem like common sense. After all, our culture regularly claims that identity is an individual affair, something we carve out for ourselves and by ourselves. But it turns out that the gift of identity is given to us by those around us, as we see ourselves through the eyes of those closest to us. And, just so we're not confused, belonging is different than fitting in. Indeed, it's the exact opposite, as many of us will remember from adolescence. Fitting in is changing yourself to be acceptable to the group, whereas belonging is being found acceptable by your group just as you are. We all need to belong. Jesus is not testing Peter, but reinstating him to the community of believers by allowing him to confess faith the same number of times he denied faith earlier. Jesus is drawing Peter back into a community to which he belongs and which accepts him for who he is. Second, Lose continues, we all need a sense of purpose, the belief that what we do matters, that if we did not show up, people would notice. Purpose, as it turns out, is one of the great motivators in the world. More powerful than money or fame or power, believing that we have something of value to contribute draws us again and again into challenging circumstances with joy. Interesting. And there's one other thing that I'd like to point out about this text. The number of fish that they dragged to the shore is 153. We don't know what that means, actually, 153. But what we do know is that it's too many for the 7 of them to handle, even if they had received help from Peter. Jesus not only feeds them, but he increases their catch abundantly. And the book of John is all about the signs that point to the one who brings abundance. In the very beginning of the book, we read at Christmas of the pre-existing Logos. All things came into being through him. All things, all good creation. And a few verses after this, at the very end of the book of John, we read, but there are also many other things that Jesus did. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. An abundance of love poured out through the good creation. An abundance of fish. An abundance of sheep to feed and tend. And an abundance of stories. We stand in the line of those stories through the ages, and we are our own genre, so to speak, here at St. Francis. We are a hybrid of stories of faith and inspiration, part adventure, even part mystery. As we listen to each other, encourage each other, forgive each other, and exhort each other to become more attuned to the ones who need feeding and tending, our story expands and becomes larger than ourselves. Hear this today, my friends. You belong in the body of Christ, that is St. Francis Church. And your purpose, with all of us, is still unfolding. I invite you to participate with us in our conversations that will soon occur, in all our existing activities and challenges, and in regular worship. Jesus still feeds us here in so many ways and tells us, "Tend my sheep, follow me."